Hey Facebook gang, it's Bob bringing you Positive Vibe session number 57, and today we're going to talk about right mindfulness, the seventh of the Eightfold Path. Yesterday we talked about right effort, having a sincere desire to make progress along the path and dedicating oneself to that practice. The other two that fall into this category of concentration is right mindfulness and right concentration. In earlier talks, I talked about meditation and being divided into two categories. Concentration being sort of a single pointed focus, a focused attention on a meditative object where you can go really deep into all of the aspects of whatever that object is, eventually uncovering through insight and wisdom, uncovering the impermanent nature of that object, the things that we ascribe as permanent or having a self or having some sort of eternal quality. Through that deep concentration, you recognize that that meditation object isn't really real. That can be a thing like a candle or candle flame or a decomposing corpse, or it could be any number of physical objects, but then it also gets into the concentration on the mental states of being able to really focus in on mental states, whether they be wholesome or unwholesome, as they arise, to be able to focus that concentration on them. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow, but that's juxtaposed with right mindfulness being the other half of meditation. Talk about this sort of pervasive awareness, the ability to sort of be aware of all things, all feelings, everything that arises within you and external to you, to have a sense of those things as they arise. What that allows you to do is ultimately recognize, as we talked in right effort about unwholesome states and wholesome states, to recognize when they're present, or to recognize as they start to arise that you identify them. In simpler terms, mindfulness, we've talked about in meditation being, I can go and sit someplace and I might be mindful of sounds. I might not focus on any one particular sound, but I'm just trying to be aware of all of the different sounds at play. So I hear birds in the background, I hear chimes next to me, I hear the wind through the leaves, I hear the washing machine draining water inside. So it's taking in all that information and realizing that my attention is bouncing from one to the other, and when it grabs my attention, when my concentration goes there, sometimes willingly, sometimes sort of unconsciously or subconsciously, it's those arising of those mental states that, if founded in wrong view or if founded in wrong intention, they start to bear other kinds of fruit. They start to lead me in other directions that are not in alignment with the Dharma, which is, again, the cycle of karma, the cycle of rebirth, that ultimately everything is impermanent, that we're in a state of suffering, that the attachment to those things is what causes our suffering. In mindfulness, as I said, in mindfulness, I can observe my thoughts, I can observe the mind at work, and I can observe, before it ever really becomes a true thought, I can observe when I start to sense something, or I start to have a feeling about something, where in this example, I just moved that hair out of my eye. I didn't have to act on that, but I had this sensation. The sensation was there's touching, right? The hair, I didn't even have to name it, but something is touching, it's causing an irritation. And I mindlessly, without thinking of it, I just moved it out of my way because it was annoying me. In mindfulness, I actually examine the process, or in concentration, I examine the process of what I'm feeling, how it feels, why I felt it. Is it really painful? Is it harmful? I go into these investigative layers, and then ultimately, with intention, I decide to act. Instead of just subconsciously doing it, I decide, okay, I'm now going to move the hair, or I'm going to leave it there as a meditation object. The mindfulness is what allows me to continue to be aware of those sensations, to be aware of sort of all things at all times. That's through our sense doors. That's what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch, what we smell, and then other objects of the mind. But that mindfulness is this pervasive awareness sort of at all times. An analogy that I like to use is, if you imagine a general, and this general, him or her with their army perched on a hill, that has a 360-degree view of their surroundings. They can see enemies coming on a clear day without forests, without anything obscuring their vision or their senses. They can see the enemy coming, and therefore, in plenty of time, they can prepare for that. By seeing the enemy coming, then they can make the decision it's coming from the north or it's coming from the south. Then they can take their binoculars or whatever equipment that they might use to zoom in so that they can get really detailed assessments of what that army looks like, what weapons they're using, what armor they have. Do they have any siege engines? Are they on horses or are they on foot? Do they look tired? Are they camping? What's the number? That's concentration. That's taking a focused lens and looking at that through a greater level of detail, because you already know that the threat is there through mindfulness, that 360-degree view of what your senses have. Without mindfulness, you could imagine, let's say that mindfulness is pretty good. The general at the top of the hill can see 360 degrees except for some area that is obscured by fog or weather or maybe clumps of trees. Those things that obscure the ability to sense then prevent the ability to really apprehend, really concentrate on where that threat might be coming from. You may know that the threat's there, but you might have to use other senses. You may not have all the information and therefore are dealing from a position of ignorance. You may not be as prepared to battle when, say, the unwholesome states arise, or you may not be able to create wholesome states because there's something outside of your mindfulness and outside of your ability to concentrate on that and really penetrate deeply the sort of the illusion that whatever that threat might be. Likewise, if you're not on the hill, if you're in the middle of the forest and you have no view, you have no mindfulness, then you're subject or susceptible to attack from any and all directions in very short notice, and probably very ill-equipped to be able to deal with that. In the same way, mindfulness helps you recognize unwholesome thoughts arising, recognize the maybe wrong intentions, or recognize when loving kindness is being shared, and when there are opportunities to show and grow loving kindness and compassion for others. Then you can use the right tools to really investigate deeply feelings of attachment, feelings of desire, feelings of greed or delusion or anger, aversion, which are the fundamental defilements of what keep us in samsara, in this round of rebirth and karma. By failing to understand that and see that, then we continue to experience this bout of suffering because we keep repeating the same behaviors. We don't see the army coming, we don't see the enemy at our door, and then are also not then equipped with the right tools of concentration to really delve deeply and clear away the fog, clear away the illusion, and combat those enemies where they are. So that's a little bit long-winded analogy, but hopefully that helps understand how mindfulness and concentration work together, and the effort that it takes to be vigilant, to desire to make progress on that path. We often have, as you know, this device is in front of me recording, and you may be watching on a device of your own. And you think about when you're done watching this video, what's the very next thing that you're going to do? And I encourage you to take just a moment and not jump right to the next thing. After closing this out, after hearing my voice in close, put your phone down. If you're using a phone or a tablet, just put it down for a moment and take a second of mindfulness. Take a second to intentionally choose your next action. Decide how you want to spend that effort. Examine your views and examine your intentions, and think about, what are you aware of at this moment? What are you mindful of? What can you hear? What can you see? What do you observe that we just take for granted and keeps continuing to pass us by without us ever really noticing? So that's my encouragement to you. I hope that you love one another. I hope that you teach and inspire each other every day. And I hope that you express gratitude for something for which you're grateful today. And take a moment and be mindful. Just give yourself that opportunity and see what happens. We'll talk to you for Positive Vibe session number 58 tomorrow. Cheers.